Captain Lyra Vance had dreamed of the diplomatic corps since she was 16 years old. She had spent 3 years learning alien languages and 2 more years studying interspecies law. She had passed every test with perfect scores. She had written papers about peaceful communication between humans and the dozens of alien species in the Galactic Union. Everything in her life had pointed toward one goal: becoming a diplomat who would build bridges between worlds. So when her transfer orders arrived aboard the starship ISS Concordance, she felt nothing but excitement. She glanced at the destination Outpost Caro 7 and smiled. She had heard good things about that station. She packed her bags and said goodbye to her crewmates without reading the rest of the document. That was her first mistake. The shuttle ride took 6 hours. Lyra spent most of it reviewing her notes on Kovathi greeting customs and Idrek's social hierarchies. She wanted to make a good first impression. She wanted to prove that humans belonged in the diplomatic world. When the shuttle doors opened, she stepped onto the metal platform of Outpost Caro 7 with her head held high. The air smelled like recycled oxygen and something else, something sharp and metallic. She noticed dark stains on the walls that looked like old blood. She noticed claw marks on the floor that went deep into the steel. A Kovathi soldier stood waiting for her. He was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with gray-armored skin that looked like stone. His eyes were small and yellow, and they stared at her with obvious confusion. "You are the new transfer?" he asked in a deep, rumbling voice. "Yes, Captain Lyra Vance reporting for duty," she said with a bright smile. "I'm excited to begin my work here." The Kovathi looked at a datapad in his enormous hand. He looked back at her. He looked at the datapad again. "Follow me," he said finally. He led her through corridors that grew darker and more damaged as they walked. She saw weapons racks on every wall. She saw soldiers of various species carrying pulse rifles and wearing heavy armor. None of them looked like diplomats. All of them looked like warriors. A cold feeling began to grow in her stomach. The Kovathi stopped outside a large door marked with strange symbols. "Commander Torvak will see you now," he said. Lyra walked through the door and found herself in a wide office filled with trophies. But these were not normal trophies. These were skulls and claws and spines from creatures she had never seen before. Some of them were bigger than she was. Some of them had teeth longer than her arm. Behind a metal desk sat the largest Kovathi she had ever seen. His skin was covered in scars, deep white lines that crossed his face and arms like a map of violence. One of his eyes was missing, replaced by a glowing red implant. He was reading her file, and his expression grew more confused with every second. "Captain Vance," he said slowly, "you requested the diplomatic corps." "Yes, sir," Lyra replied. "I have extensive training in xenolinguistics and interspecies relations." Commander Torvak set down the file. He stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. "Do you know where you are?" he asked. "Outpost Caro 7, sir." "Do you know what we do here?" Lyra paused. She suddenly realized she had never actually researched what Caro 7 was famous for. "I assumed diplomatic work with local species?" Torvak made a sound that might have been a laugh. It sounded like rocks grinding together. "This is the Beast Division," he said. "We hunt rift beasts." The words hit Lyra like a physical blow. Everyone knew about rift beasts. They were monsters that came through dimensional tiers, creatures from other realities that existed only to kill and destroy. They had wiped out entire colonies. They were the reason children on 100 worlds still feared the dark. "There has been a mistake," Torvak continued. "Your file was clearly sent to the wrong division. We requested a combat specialist, not a diplomat." "I can contact command," Lyra said quickly. "I can get this sorted out." Torvak shook his massive head. The next transport leaves in 3 months. Until then, you are assigned here. 3 months. Lyra felt her dreams crumbling around her. 3 months in this place of blood and monsters. I will put you in logistics, Torvik said. Filing reports, managing supplies. You will stay far from the hunting parties. I do not want a human death on my record. Lyra heard something in his voice that surprised her. It was not cruelty. It was concern. He genuinely did not want her to die. Sir, I can handle myself, she said. Torvik stood up from his desk. He towered over her like a mountain. You are human, he said flatly. Your species is classified as soft. Your bones break easily. Your skin tears easily. You require sleep every 16 hours and food every 8. The Idreks can fight for 3 days without rest. The Kovathi can survive wounds that would kill 10 humans. You are not built for this work. With respect, sir, this is not disrespect, Captain. It is biology. Torvik walked to his trophy wall and touched the skull of something with 6 eye sockets. This creature killed 20 soldiers before we brought it down. 20 of our best warriors. You would not last 20 seconds against it. Lara wanted to argue. She wanted to prove him wrong. But she looked at those trophies, at those impossible monsters, and she felt her courage fade. I understand, sir, she said quietly. Torvik nodded. Report to Section 7 tomorrow morning. Lieutenant Crix will show you the filing systems. Keep your head down, do your work, and in 3 months you will be on a shuttle to the diplomatic corps where you belong. He turned back to his desk, and Lyra understood she was dismissed. She walked to her assigned quarters in a daze. The room was small and cold, with bare metal walls and a single window that looked out into the darkness of space. She sat on the hard bed and stared at nothing. This was not her dream. This was not her plan. She was supposed to be building peace between species, not hiding in an office while monsters roamed the halls. But she was here now, and she would survive. She lay down and closed her eyes, trying to sleep. But somewhere in the distance, she heard an alarm begin to wail, followed by the sound of pulse rifles firing. Welcome to the Beast Division, she thought. 3 months felt like a very long time. 3 weeks passed slowly on Outpost Karo 7. Lyra spent her days in Section 7, filing reports and organizing supply records. The work was boring but safe. She learned the names of every soldier on the station. She memorized the types of rift beasts they hunted. She read every combat report she could find, studying how the creatures moved and attacked and died. She told herself it was just curiosity. She told herself she was simply passing the time until her transfer. But deep inside, something else was happening. Something was waking up. Lieutenant Crix, a thin Veldari with blue skin and 4 arms, noticed her interest. You read the combat files more than anyone else, he said one day. Even the hunters do not study this much. I like to understand things, Lyra replied. If I am going to be here, I might as well learn. Crix made a clicking sound with his mandibles. Be careful what you learn, human. Knowledge of monsters can become a hunger. I have seen soldiers become obsessed. Lyra smiled and returned to her work. But that night, she stayed up late reading about a creature called a Skethrak. The Skethrak was a 6-limbed horror with spines covering its body like armor. It could move faster than any soldier could run. It had killed more hunters than any other Class 3 beast. The report said it had one weakness, a nerve cluster behind its 4th limb that could disable it if struck precisely. Lyra memorized that detail. She did not know why. She just did. The attack came on a Tuesday. Lyra was in the armory, counting pulse rifle batteries when the alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed across the walls. A computerized voice announced words that froze her blood. Rift breach detected in eastern wing. All personnel evacuate to safe zones. She ran toward the door, but it was too late. The blast doors slammed shut, locking her inside. The lockdown protocol had activated. She was alone. Through the reinforced window in the door, she saw shadows moving in the corridor. She heard screaming, terrible screaming that cut off suddenly. She heard gunfire that stopped too quickly. Then she heard something else. A scratching sound. Metal being torn apart. The beast was coming. Lyra looked around the armory with wild eyes. The weapon racks were locked behind security codes she did not have. The pulse rifles were useless to her. But on the wall, in a case marked emergency, she saw a fire axe. She smashed the glass and grabbed it. The weight felt strange in her hands. She had never held a weapon like this before. The scratching grew louder. The blast door began to buckle inward. Lyra's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Every part of her brain screamed at her to hide, to find a corner and make herself small, to wait for rescue. But beyond that door were the civilian quarters. Families lived there. Children lived there. If the beast got through, it would reach them. She could not let that happen. The door exploded inward and the Skethrak burst through. It was worse than the reports described. Its body was covered in black spines that glistened with something wet. Its 6 limbs ended in claws that looked like curved swords. Its head was eyeless, just a mouth filled with rows of needle teeth. It turned toward her and screamed. The sound was like metal being torn apart. Lyra did not run. She moved. The creature lunged, and she dove to the side. Its claws missed her by inches. She swung the axe at its front leg with all her strength. The blade bit deep, and the beast howled. It spun toward her, faster than she thought possible. One claw caught her shoulder and opened her flesh to the bone. Pain exploded through her body. Blood sprayed across the floor. But she did not stop. She was small. That was supposed to be her weakness. But now she used it. She threw herself forward, sliding beneath the creature where its limbs could not reach. Its claws scraped the floor above her, missing her head by inches. She saw the 4th limb. She saw the soft spot behind it where the nerve cluster waited. She stabbed upward with the axe. The creature convulsed. Its whole body shook. It tried to move, but something was broken inside it. It collapsed onto its side, legs twitching. But it was not dead. It snapped at her with those needle teeth. It caught her leg and pulled. She felt the bones creak under the pressure. Lyra screamed and swung the axe again. And again. And again. She did not stop until the creature stopped moving. She did not stop until her arms burned with exhaustion. She did not stop until she was sitting in a pool of blood, her own and the monster's, with the axe still gripped in her shaking hands. 20 minutes later, the blast doors opened. Commander Torvak stood in the entrance with a squad of soldiers behind him. They stared at the scene with eyes full of disbelief. The small human sat beside the corpse of a Skethrak, calmly wrapping her wounded shoulder with strips torn from her uniform. "You killed it," Torvak said. His voice was soft with shock. "It was between me and the civilians," Lyra replied. Her voice was steady despite the pain. "I could not let it through. You should have hidden. You should have waited for rescue." Lyra looked up at him. Her face was covered in blood, but her eyes burned with something fierce, something ancient. It was a look that Torvak had never seen in a human before. It was the look of a predator. "Humans do not hide from what threatens our people," she said. "We never have. We never will." Torvak was silent for a long moment. He looked at the dead beast. He looked at this small, fragile creature who had done what many of his best soldiers could not. "Get her to medical," he ordered finally. Full treatment. Priority 1. As the medics carried her away, Torvak pulled up the security footage on his datapad. He watched the fight from beginning to end. He watched her move, adapt, and refuse to fall. He had called humans a soft species. He had called them prey animals who stumbled into space by accident. He was beginning to think he had been very, very wrong. The next morning, a message arrived on Lyra's medical bed. It was from Commander Torvak. It contained 2 words: report to my office. Her life was about to change forever. Word spread through Outpost Karo 7 like fire through dry grass. The human had killed a Skethrak, alone, without armor or proper weapons. The security footage was watched over 300 times in a single day. Soldiers gathered in the mess hall and the barracks, playing the video on their datapads with wide eyes. She is so small, a Kovathi warrior named Brennick muttered. How did she survive? Luck, another soldier replied. It must have been luck. But the veteran hunters who studied the footage knew better. They saw something in the way she moved. She had not fought with strength or speed. She had fought with intelligence and pure stubborn will. She had refused to die. When Lyra walked into the mess hall 3 days later, her shoulder wrapped in healing bandages, the room fell silent. Every eye turned toward her. Some looked at her with new respect. Others looked at her with confusion, as if they were seeing something they could not understand. A Idrex named Kethvon approached her table. He was 9 feet tall, with skin like gray leather and eyes that could see in total darkness. His species was considered one of the most powerful in the beast division. May I sit? He asked in his deep, rumbling voice. Lyra nodded. Kethvon lowered himself onto the bench across from her. Even sitting, he towered over her like a building. I watched the footage, he said. I have questions. Ask them. Your kind bruises if struck too hard. Your bones break under pressure. You require sleep every 16 hours and food every 8. The Idrex can fight for 3 days without rest. The Kovathi can heal wounds in minutes that would kill a human. He leaned forward, his dark eyes studying her face. How did you survive? Lyra considered the question for a long moment. She thought about her homeworld Earth. She thought about the history of her species. On my planet, she began, we once hunted animals 10 times our size. Mammoths, they were called. They were covered in thick fur and had tusks like spears. They could crush a human with 1 step. How did you kill them? We followed them. We did not try to outrun them. They were faster. We did not try to overpower them. They were stronger. Instead, we walked after them. Day after day, mile after mile. They would run until their hearts gave out from exhaustion, but we would still be coming. She paused. We are not the strongest species, Kethvon. We are not the fastest. But we do not stop. We never stop. The Idrex stared at her. Something shifted in his ancient eyes, something like recognition. Your kind frightens me, he said quietly. I did not think that was possible. 1 week later, Commander Torvak summoned her to his office. Your transfer request to the diplomatic corps has been denied, he said. Lyra felt her heart sink. Denied? By who? By me. Torvak stood up from his desk and walked to his trophy wall. I am reassigning you to active duty with the hunting teams. You will begin training tomorrow. Sir, I am not trained for combat. I studied languages and laws, not weapons and tactics. You killed a Skethrak with a fire axe. Torvak turned to face her. You have already proven more capable than soldiers who trained their entire lives. He crossed his massive arms. I do not understand humans. Your bodies are weak, but something else inside you is very, very strong. I want to see what you can do with proper training. Lyra wanted to argue. She wanted to demand her transfer. But something inside her had changed since that night in the armory. She had tasted combat, and part of her wanted more. "I will do my best, sir," she said. Training was brutal. The other hunters pushed her hard. They taught her how to use pulse rifles and plasma blades. They taught her tracking techniques and survival skills. They made her run until she collapsed, and then made her run some more. But Lyra noticed something. She saw patterns they did not see. When they studied Rift Beast behavior, she found inconsistencies in the data. When they planned hunting strategies, she spotted weaknesses in their approach. "You are wasting energy," she told a group of Karvathi soldiers during a training exercise. "The Rethrak always circles left before charging. If you position yourself on its right, you force it to change direction. That creates a 2-second delay, enough time to aim for the throat." The soldiers stared at her. They tried her suggestion. It worked. By month 4, Lyra had the highest survival rate in her squad. She was not the strongest fighter. She was not the fastest. But she prepared more than anyone else. She studied every creature they hunted. She memorized every weakness, every pattern, every behavior. "The human thinks too much," one soldier complained. "The human is still alive," another replied. How many of us can say the same after 4 months? By month 6, Lyra had the highest kill count in the entire division. Commander Torvak reviewed her record with growing amazement. She had killed 14 rift beasts in 6 months, more than most hunters killed in a year. And she had done it without the natural advantages of the alien species around her. "She adapts," he told his officers. "She learns. Every fight makes her more dangerous." The other species began to watch her differently. There was no more pity in their eyes. Instead, there was something like unease. Humans had always seemed so harmless, so friendly and diplomatic. They smiled easily and made friends with every species they met. Now the hunters of Karo 7 understood the truth. That friendliness was a mask. Beneath it lived something old and dangerous, a predator that had clawed its way to the stars through millions of years of survival. One night, Kethvon found Lyra in the training room, practicing with her plasma blade long after everyone else had gone to sleep. "You should rest," he said. "We hunt tomorrow." "I will rest when I am dead," Lyra replied without stopping. Kethvon watched her for a long moment. "The others are afraid of you now," he said. "Not because of what you are, but because of what you represent. If humans can do what you have done, then everything we believed about your species is wrong." Lyra finally stopped her practice. She turned to face the massive Idrex with sweat dripping down her face. "Good," she said. "You should have been afraid of us from the beginning." She returned to her training, and Kethvon quietly walked away. He did not sleep well that night. The Void Leviathan came without warning. One moment, the space around Outpost Karo 7 was empty. The next moment, a rift tore open, the largest dimensional tear ever recorded in Galactic Union history. It stretched across the darkness like a wound in reality itself, glowing with sickly purple light. And something came through. The creature was the size of a warship. Its body was covered in thick black plates that reflected no light. Its head was a massive tentacle surrounding a mouth that could swallow a shuttle whole. Its eyes, dozens of them, burned with cold intelligence. Alarms screamed across the station. Soldiers ran to battle stations. Commander Torvak stood on the command deck, staring at the monster through the main viewport with horror in his remaining eye. "All personnel, prepare for evacuation," he ordered. "Civilian transports launch in 30 minutes. Hunting teams, your mission is to delay the creature long enough for evacuation to complete." Everyone understood what that meant. Delay missions against Void Leviathans were death sentences. 3 outposts had already fallen to this class of beast. None of the soldiers who fought them had survived. Lyra stood among her squad, watching the creature drift toward the station. It moved slowly, almost lazily. It knew it had all the time in the universe. It knew nothing here could stop it. "We need a bigger plan," she said quietly. Kefvan heard her. "There is no bigger plan. We fight, we die. The civilians escape. That is the only option." "No," Lyra said. "That is the only option you can see. But there is always another way." She turned and ran toward the command deck. Commander Torvak was barking orders when Lyra burst through the door. "Sir, I need to see all tactical data on Void Leviathans," she demanded. "We do not have time for research, Captain. We have 30 minutes before that thing reaches weapons range." "Then give me the data now." Something in her voice made Torvak pause. He had learned to trust that voice over the past months. He transferred the files to her datapad without another word. Lyra found a corner and began reading. She read faster than she had ever read before. Her human brain pushed itself past normal limits, a survival response that her species had developed over millions of years. When death approached, humans did not slow down. They sped up. 6 hours of data. She absorbed it in 30 minutes. The Void Leviathan had destroyed 3 outposts. But Lyra noticed patterns in the destruction. The creature always attacked from the same angle. It always targeted power sources first. It moved in predictable hunting patterns because no prey had ever fought back effectively. She saw the weakness. "Commander," she shouted across the deck. "I have a plan." Torvik looked at her with exhausted eyes. "We are not going to delay it, Captain. Delaying is the only option. We are not going to delay it." Lyra held up her datapad. "We are going to kill it." Silence fell across the command deck. Every officer turned to stare at her. "Kill it?" Torvik repeated slowly. "Nothing has ever killed a Void Leviathan. They are classified as unstoppable, only because no one has tried the right approach." Lyra walked to the main tactical display and began pulling up diagrams. "Look at its hunting pattern. It always approaches power sources in a straight line. It opens its mouth to consume reactor cores whole. That mouth is the only part of its body not covered in armor. You want to attack it through its mouth? I want to fly inside it." Lyra brought up the schematics of a mining vessel from the station's hangar. "This ship is small enough to enter the creature's internal structure. According to the biological scans from previous encounters, Void Leviathans have a central nerve cluster deep inside their bodies. If we can reach it and plant explosive charges, we can kill it from the inside." Torvak stared at the display. His massive hands gripped the console so hard the metal creaked. "That is insane," he said. "Whoever pilots that vessel will be crushed inside the creature. The internal pressure alone would kill any species. Not if the pilot is small enough to fit through the maintenance tunnels." Lyra met his eye. "Not if the pilot continues on foot after the ship is destroyed." The room went very quiet. "You are volunteering," Torvik said. It was not a question. "I am the only one who can do it." Lyra replied. "The tunnels inside that creature are too small for Kovathi or Idrex. A human is the only species that can navigate them. You will die." Lyra smiled, a strange, fierce smile that made the alien officers uncomfortable. "Maybe, but it will die too. That is the trade my species has always been willing to make." Torvak was silent for a long moment. He looked at the Void Leviathan drifting toward his station. He looked at this small human who was offering to sacrifice herself for everyone aboard. "You have 1 hour to prepare," he said finally. "We will provide covering fire to draw the creature toward the mining bay. After that, everything depends on you." Lyra nodded and turned to leave. "Captain Vance," Torvik called after her, She stopped. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you die for species that are not your own? We are not your family. We are not your people." Lyra turned back to face him. "You are wrong, Commander. Every soldier on this station is my people now. Every civilian, every child, every life. Humans do not see species, we see family. And we will do anything to protect our family." She walked out before he could respond. The battle lasted 11 hours. Lyra piloted the mining vessel into the Leviathan's gaping mouth. She navigated through chambers filled with acid and crushing pressure. When her ship was destroyed, she continued on foot crawling through biological tunnels that no living creature should survive. She found the nerve cluster. She planted the charges. She ran. The explosion lit up the sky over Karo 7. The creature died with a scream that echoed across space. They found Lyra 2 days later. She had crawled 3 kilometers through the wreckage with 2 broken legs. She was unconscious but alive. When she woke up in medical, Commander Torvak was standing over her. "I have transferred 12 humans to this division," he said quietly. "I have requested more." Lyra smiled through her pain. Her species had finally proven what they were capable of. And this was only the beginning. 5 years had passed since the death of the Void Leviathan. Outpost Karo 7 was unrecognizable now. The old station had been rebuilt and expanded into a fortress of steel and purpose. New wings stretched out into space like the arms of a giant. New ships filled the hangars. New soldiers walked the halls. And among those soldiers, humans were everywhere. They made up 30% of the Beast Division, now hundreds of men and women who had followed the path that Lyra Vance had carved. They brought their strange gifts with them, their endless endurance, their pattern recognition, their creativity in the face of impossible odds. They cross-trained with every species, sharing techniques and learning new ones. They made everyone around them better. Commander Lyra Vance stood at the viewport of the new warship Concordance 2, watching the stars drift past. Her reflection stared back at her older now, with a few gray streaks in her dark hair and new scars crossing her arms. She had been promoted twice and decorated 4 times. She was considered the greatest hunter in the history of the division. But she still remembered the scared diplomat who had stepped off a shuttle 5 years ago, dreaming of peaceful negotiations instead of blood and battle. That woman felt like a stranger now. "Commander?" A voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to find Kethvon standing behind her. The Idrex had aged as well. His skin was more weathered, his movements slightly slower. But his eyes were still sharp, and he had become one of her most trusted officers. "What is it?" she asked. "We have a situation. Long-range sensors have detected a rift forming in Sector 7. Lyra felt her heart quicken. Sector 7 was dangerously close to 3 colony worlds. If something came through that rift, millions of lives would be at risk. "What class?" she asked. "Unknown yet, but the energy readings are massive." Kethvon paused. "Possibly larger than the first Leviathan." Lyra nodded slowly. She had known this day would come. The rifts were appearing more frequently now, and the creatures coming through were growing stronger. Some scientists believed the dimensional barriers were weakening. Others believed something on the other side was testing them, probing for weaknesses. Either way, the Beast Division would be ready. "Assemble the hunting teams," she ordered. "All of them. I want every ship in the fleet prepared for departure within the hour." Kethvon saluted and hurried away. Lyra turned back to the viewport. In the distance, she could see the faint purple glow of the forming rift. It pulsed like a heartbeat, like something alive waiting to be born. 20 minutes later, she stood in the main briefing room with her senior officers. Kalvathi warriors sat beside Idrex trackers. Veldari technicians worked alongside human tacticians. 5 years ago, such a mixed group would have been impossible. Now it was normal. The rift will fully open in approximately 6 hours, Lyra began. Based on energy signatures, we estimate the creature will be Leviathan class, possibly the largest ever recorded. Murmurs rippled through the room. Even veteran hunters felt fear at those words. A young human officer raised his hand. His name was Marcus Chen, and he had joined the division only 2 years ago. "Commander, what is our strategy?" "We will intercept the creature before it can reach the colony worlds." Lyra pulled up a tactical display. "The Concordance 2 will lead the assault, supported by 12 hunter vessels. We will engage the creature in open space where we have room to maneuver." "And if it is too strong?" a Kovathi officer asked. "The first Leviathan nearly destroyed this station. Something larger could be unstoppable." Lyra smiled that same fierce smile that had unnerved aliens for 5 years. "Nothing is unstoppable. Every creature has a weakness. Our job is to find it and exploit it." She looked around the room at the faces of her soldiers. "I know you are afraid. Fear is natural. But fear is also a tool. Let it sharpen your senses. Let it focus your mind. And then set it aside and do your job." She paused. "The Galactic Union once called humans a soft species. They said we were prey animals who stumbled into space by accident. They believed our kindness was weakness." Her voice grew harder. "They were wrong. Our kindness is a choice we make because we know what we are capable of. Beneath our smiles and our diplomacy lives something old and dangerous. Something that survived ice ages and mass extinctions. Something that crossed oceans and conquered mountains. Something that looked at the stars and said, 'Those belong to us too.'" She looked at the humans in the room and then at the aliens who had learned to fight beside them. "Today, we show the universe what the Beast Division has become. Not humans alone, but all of us together. Korvathi strength. Idrek's vision. Veldari precision. Human persistence. Separately, we are powerful. Together, we are unstoppable." The room erupted in cheers. 6 hours later, the rift tore open. The creature that emerged was beyond anything they had ever seen. It made the first Void Leviathan look like a child. Its body stretched across the darkness like a moon made of nightmares. Its tentacles could have wrapped around planets. But the Beast Division did not hesitate. 12 ships screamed toward the monster. Weapons blazed. Soldiers fought with everything they had. Humans and aliens worked together in perfect coordination, covering weaknesses and amplifying strengths. And at the center of it all, Commander Lyra Vance led the charge. She was not the strongest warrior in the division. She was not the fastest or the toughest. But she was the most relentless. She had killed more rift beasts than anyone in history. She had walked through hell and crawled out the other side. She was human. The battle raged for 18 hours. Ships were lost. Soldiers died. But slowly and possibly, the Beast Division began to win. They found the creature's weakness, a gap in its armor near what might have been a heart. They poured everything into that gap. When the monster finally fell, its death cry echoed across 3 star systems. Lyra stood on the bridge of the Concordance 2, surrounded by her exhausted crew. They had won. Against all odds, they had won. Kethvon approached her with something like reverence in his ancient eyes. "The Galactic Union will need a new classification for your species," he said. Lyra turned to face him. Behind her, through the viewport, the massive corpse of the Void Leviathan drifted in the starlight. "They already have one," she replied. "What is it?" She smiled, not fierce this time, but proud. "Apex Predators." The Beast Division had made a mistake 5 years ago. They had assigned a human diplomat to a hunting unit. It was the best mistake they ever made.